Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Lee Michael here with Live Action Media, your live streaming partner for the Hardee County Fair. Today is Monday, February the 15th, 2021, and we are at the Swine Show. We are getting ready for the event to start. As you see, people are milling around. They just had a final call for the students and kiddos to head over to their animals, and we will be preparing for tonight's show. And we want to thank our lead sponsors for the fair: Vision Ace Hardware, Mosaic, Suncoast Credit Union, Advent Health, Intercoastal Steel Builders. Thank you to our sponsors, and let's get ready to show some swine.
where she helps manage the Portsover Ranch. They run 200 registered Angus cows. Callie was a member of the livestock judging team at both Butler Community College and Oklahoma State University. She earned the All-American honors in both junior and senior college. Callie graduated from Oklahoma with a bachelor's degree in animal science and a minor in ag business. Since then, returning to Georgia, she has judged numerous shows from across the Southeast. So let's give her a round of applause for coming down to Wauchula. We will now begin with Class 1, and just as a reminder, we do divisions. There will be 3 classes in each division. She'll pick the winner, and it'll come back for the grand champion of that division. As she talks to classes tonight, she will start with the top and work down to the bottom. She will be cutting out the bottom end and putting them in the pins in the back and going from there. So, Cale Henderson, Exhibitor 624, Serenity Bulk Night, and number 693, Alizé Sullivan. Class weighing 251 to 253. And also, just as a reminder to everybody, we are live stream, so you may be on international TV, so be very careful what you do tonight. We need Class 3. Class 3, please report to your pen at this time. Also, as a reminder, Miss Callie will be picking showmanship, and showmanship will be tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. We also want to remind everybody, if you look right out front, is a brand new 2021 2500 Chevrolet, a GMC pickup. You go online, it's called the 20-buck truck. It'll be given away October 21st on National Ag Day. Money goes to each of the chapters, and then you get an opportunity to win the truck, and whatever is raced in our county comes back to our county to the youth exhibitors.
Well, good evening, and it's certainly a pleasure to be here with y'all tonight. A nice class to start off our show. I think one that kind of falls in place pretty logical for me. Like you talked about, we're going to start talking them from the top to the bottom. The young lady right here in the white shirt is going to be your class winner. I just think that one is one that wins just in terms of a show ring look, one that's really up-headed and drives easily the best within this respective division. She does a really good job of getting that one shown. Super fresh in terms of his shape and his hair coat. One that I think just in terms of quality and look and balance with plenty of muscle is one that just needs to go ahead and win. From there, I think in the middle pair it gets a little closer. There's some give and take. For me, the young man's black belted bear is going to be second. I think one that just in that middle pair is probably a little more flexible in terms of his skeleton, has a little more endurance, and just more nearly leveled out there out of his hip. It's a middle pair between that one and the young ladies right there behind him. I think a pair of hogs that have a lot of shape and a lot of muscularity, really bold in terms of their center of that pair. I think the young man's is just better in terms of his skeleton and the way that he gets out and goes. The young lady's bear right here in front of me that's going to be third is one that's just packed full of meat and muscle. Love the shape and the width when you get in behind that one. I guess for me, that one's one that's just too tight off of both ends of his skeleton, one that I'd certainly like to peel back there in terms of his finish as well. The young lady's bear that's going to round out the class, one that's super flexible in terms of his skeleton, probably leaner than those two hogs right there in front of him. One for me that just needs more shape and muscularity and skeletal width to go ahead and compete. But a really nice class. Let's give them all a big hand.
First place goes to Serenity Bolt Knight. Second place goes to Carol Henderson. Third place goes to Summer Cartwright. And fourth place goes to Alize Sullivan. Coming back for showmanship will be Serenity Bolt Knight and Carol Henderson. We're now ready for Class 2. Exhibitor 536, Sarah Tootin. Exhibitor 566, Chloe Harris. Exhibitor 633, Jaden King. Exhibitor 685, Morgan Parks. Exhibitor 699, Tegan Van Sickle. Exhibitor 669, J.C. Patterson. And Exhibitor 677, Bree Grice. Pigs weighing 554 to 556. We need Division 2, Class 1, report to your pens. Division 2, Class 1, report to your pens.
well, a little bigger class here to work through, and really a lot of differences within this respective class. I guess to me this top pair is pretty challenging because I think they both offer distinct class advantages in terms of one's probably the better built one, that if you leave yourself asking is there enough muscle there, and the other one is really stout, really shapely, really busted open, but then you leave yourself questioning is that one sound enough and good enough build. I guess for me, in my personal preference, I like the one that's the best build, and this one right here is going to win. I think just in terms of design, and the longer we're out here, the more and more apparent it gets. When that hog hit the ring, one that I just love the way he's built in terms of his top side of his skeleton, gets out and flexes with plenty of flexibility, just really fresh when you study him from the side. I mean, if he comes right at you and goes away from you, I can question myself of whether he's got enough muscle, but I think he does have enough. He's just not overwhelming within that respective regard, and to me, I just like his build and his look and the way that he gets out and goes for the duration of the drive. The one that's going to end up in second, to me, is one that's super shapely. You study that one up high, tons of shape and turn to his top, one that's really muscular from behind, really way more busted. The longer they're out here, that one just really starting to wear down. One that for me doesn't go quite good enough off of his rear leg, really wants to twist right there in terms of his ham-loin junction. But a really nice pair of hogs, and where you put your priorities can definitely determine how you sort that top pair. The young ladies that comes out next is one that's just in terms of a carcass hog is really, really good. One that's packed full of shape and muscularity, really stout and really powerful. I guess for me, that one just doesn't have the look and the design. Maybe a little lower fronted bear that doesn't just have the quality and the presence of those two black bears right ahead of him, but just in terms of the basic fundamentals of a pliable center, one that's really shapely and muscular, certainly one that there's a lot of things to like about. The one that comes out here in fourth is one that's kind of similar, but I think this one is really actually pretty good in terms of his build. He gets out and he's really flexible. To me, that one's one that's just a little drier and harder in terms of his center, one that's probably just not as opened up and pliable as those three right ahead of him. The young lady that comes out next really gave her a time and was kind of hard to study on, but when he made that one pass through the ring, I guess kind of told the story. One that's super big-legged, really like the foot size of that one, a lot of really cool pieces. I guess for me, that one's one that's not as stout in terms of his skull, one that to me just needs to be deeper and softer there in terms of his center, just needs a more practical look to go ahead and compete with those others, but certainly to be commended as hard as she fought with that one. Goes, the young lady does a really nice job of driving him. For me, that one just needs to be busted open in terms of his skeleton, one that just needs to be more robust there in terms of his center as well, but she does a nice job. The red one that rounds out the class, one that's like the one right ahead of him, is really flexible, one that's really long spine and level top. For me, that one just needs more shape and muscularity and a market type show, but a really nice class. Let's give them all a big round of applause.
First place goes to Tegan Van Sickle. Second place, Morgan Parks. Third place, Sarah Tootin. Fourth place, Chloe Harris. Fifth place, Bria Grice. Sixth place, J.C. Patterson. And seventh place, Jaden King. We're now ready for Class 3. Coming back for showmanship out of that class is Jaden King, Morgan Parks, and Tegan Van Sickle. We're now ready for Class 3, Exhibitor 500, Caleb Lee, 567, Jewel Sokolowski, 553, Ryan Thomas, 568, Justin Shinfield, 523, Kaylee Harris, 542, Caroline Cornell, and 688, Katie Henderson, weighing 257 to 260.
Well, another class that I guess kind of proves pretty challenging to me, but I think there's one that I land on kind of from the get-go that needs to be the one that wins, and that's the young ladies right here in front of me. For me, featured, heavy structured, like the way that one is in terms of his freshness of hair and skin and just his shape and muscularity when you view him over the top side. I guess if we're going to be picky on him, you could kind of pull him up there in terms of his tail set, lengthen him out there as well. But one that I think just in terms of quality and combining that with the market fundamentals is the one that needs to go ahead and win. I guess a closer call to me came in second and third. Of that pair, I think this young lady's bear just has more in terms of center body. I think he's one that has a nickel more shape and muscularity. When you study him right there on the top side of his skeleton, I think he goes to the ground with a little more foot and bone. But a pair of hogs right there in second and third that compared to the rest of the class, I think they're just better built ones that still offer plenty in terms of shape and muscularity. The young man that comes out in third, I think is one that you really want to like from the side. When this young man does a really nice job showing him, and when he gets him out and drives, that one's really up-headed. He's really fresh there ahead of his blade. One that's just really long, really lean in terms of his shape. I guess for me, I question whether there's just enough to that one. He's a little narrower when he comes right at you. It goes to the ground on a little frailer feature. But for me, I think just in terms of build and endurance, as he gets out here on the drive, that's where that one lands in third. The young ladies that comes out next, I think those the pair of the third and fourth are very, very different in terms of their type and kind. This young lady's bear is just packed full of shape and muscularity. Love that one when you view him up high. I guess for me, the longer we're out here, that one just gives up in terms of his skeleton. He's too rock forward in the angle to his blade. Just needs more flex and comfort as he gets out of his rear too as well. But a nice one in terms of carcass merit. Kind of the same goes for this one. The young man's white bear is one that's just really wide, really opened up. I guess for me, that one's one that's just a little plainer ahead of his blade. One that maybe doesn't balance up quite as well as the other ones. Really like to strengthen that one up in terms of his pasterns as well. The young man's bear that comes out next is one that you really want to like in terms of his look and his balance from the side. He's really stout featured when he goes to the ground. I guess for me, you'd like to strengthen that one up right there behind his blade. With that, I just like to open him up off of both ends of his skeleton. The one that rounds out the class, one that certainly has a little bit of shape and muscularity, I guess for me just kind of gives up in terms of quality and look and skeletal design when you study him from the side. But a really nice class. Let's give them all a big hand.
First place goes to Katie Henderson. Second place, Kayla Harris. Third place, Caleb Lee. Fourth place, Caroline Cornell. Fifth place, Ryan Thomas. Sixth place, Justin Shinfield. Seventh place, Jewel Sokolowski. And coming back for showmanship will be Caleb Lee, Caroline Cornell, and Katie Harrison. We're now ready for the Division I champion. We'll be bringing back 624, Serenity Bulk Knight, 699, Tegan Van Sickle from Class 2, and 688, Katie Henderson from Class 3. Katie Henderson will be coming back for showmanship.
Well, we drove these hogs plenty long in class, so I'm going to try to be quick in these divisions to keep them from breaking down. I guess within this respective division, there was one that came out of our last class that I thought was really stout, really muscular, a lot of foot and bone. Maybe didn't love his build just in terms of the way he is on the top side, coming there out of his tail set, but one that you really like just in terms of his shape, his muscularity, and all his stoutness of feature. Out of the second class, there was one that we just loved in terms of his build. I really like the way that one gets out on drives, super tall-shouldered, up-headed one that's really good in terms of his top line. I said within that respective class, I didn't know if he had enough shape and muscularity, but I think I deemed him with enough to go ahead and win that respective class. For me, I guess there's one out here that kind of combines the good in both of those, and that's the young ladies out of the first class, one that I think is just really good in terms of his skeleton, one that's really good in terms of his shape and muscularity as well. She'll go ahead and be your division champion.
624, Serenity Bulk Knight is the champion. We need Cale Henderson to bring his back into the ring. We need Class 2 of Division 2 to report to your pen. Class 2 of Division 2, please report to your pen.
Well, we get back out here and we bring our reserve in, and I guess for me, or our second in, for me, I guess reserve gets a lot closer. There's two that are probably pretty similar in terms of their type and climb, the ones in Class 1 and Class 3, and then there's the one that's kind of the outlier in Class 2. I guess for me, the one I like the best just in terms of market fundamentals and shape and muscularity, one that's still plenty good enough in terms of his skeleton, is young ladies out of Class 3. She's going to be your reserve.
Katie Henderson is our reserve champion for Division 1. We're now ready for Division 2, Class 1. Exhibitor 558, Michaela Santana. Exhibitor 673, Caroline Sharp. Exhibitor 534, Rigdon Cornelius. Exhibitor 604, Morgan Dickey. Exhibitor 684, Elliot Shontag. Exhibitor 620, Adriana Meir, and Exhibitor 697, Janelle McDuffie. Pigs weighing 262 to 264.
well, we get out here, and I think a class for me that was probably a little more logical than some classes we've had earlier. One that hit me really hard when it first came in, probably has a lot to do with the showman, but I think it's a really good hog as well. Young lady in the green jacket is going to go ahead and be your class winner. One that I think is just really good in terms of his skeleton, one that's super flexible when he's out here. She does a great job of driving now and getting his head up, one that's still really good and fresh in terms of his shape. A lot of muscularity when you get behind that one. I think one that's just really pretty fault-free in my mind. The young ladies that's going to be second is one that comes in, he's really muscular. Love that lean shape on that one's top. Love how much shape and muscularity he has behind. Super lean and extended up front. I guess for me, that one's one that's just a little tighter off of both ends of his skeleton, one that's a little more rock forward there in the angle to his blade. But just in terms of sheer carcass merit, one that's lean, really muscular, and still really good looking from the side. A lot to like about that one. The young man that comes out next is one that I think is just good in terms of practicality, one that's plenty flexible in terms of his structure, like that one just in terms of his shape and muscularity. I guess for me, he just gets a little plainer overall, a little rounder there out of his hip as well when you compare him to those two right ahead of him. But a lot of good things about that one just in terms of a practical build, look, and body type. The one that comes out next, I think one that's really flexible in terms of his skeleton, a really long spined one that can really get out and go. I guess for me, it's when you get in right behind that one that we just like to power him up, see a little more shape and muscularity from behind. The young lady that comes out next, a lot of things to like about this one just in terms of his foot and his bone, one that has some shape and muscularity, one that I guess appears to me that's probably undergone an injury of some type, one that just like to see get out and go, a little more flexible in terms of his. The one that comes out next is one that's really long spined, really long and extended, super flexible. I guess for me, both these white hogs coming out next just need a little more shape and muscularity, need to be a little more pried open, a little more up underneath. Kind of the same goes for the young ladies here. One that you like in terms of his flexibility, one that can get out and go is really long spine. I guess for me, one that's a little flatter footed, one that just needs more shape and muscularity to go ahead and play within this respective class. But another really good class, really nice class winner. Let's give them a big round of applause.
First place goes to Janelle McDuffie. Second place goes to Caroline Sharp. Third place goes to Rigdon Cornelius. Fourth place goes to Elliot Shontag. Fifth place goes to Michaela Santana. Sixth place goes to Morgan Dickey. And seventh place goes to Adriana Meir. Coming back for showmanship will be Janelle McDuffie. We're now ready for Class 2, Exhibitor 538, Kazan Norman, Exhibitor 554, Ryder Thomas, Exhibitor 678, Amelia Roberts, Exhibitor 683, Christian Avalos, Exhibitor 637, Harrison Webb, Exhibitor 524, Ryland Smith, Exhibitor 560, Danielle Clark, and Exhibitor 632, Peyton May. Exhibitors weights weighing 265 to 266. Division 2, Class 3. Please report to your pen at this time. Division 2, Class 3. We would like to introduce our Hardee County royalty at the far end of the table. We have the newly crowned Miss Hardee County, Sadie Softner. We have the Junior Miss, Savannah Wilson. We have the Junior Miss Ag, Rayleigh Deemer. We have the Cattleman Sweetheart, Macy Tyson. And we have the Little Miss, Kale Dickey. Division 3, Class 1. Division 3, Class 1, please report to your pen at this time.
Well, probably as close of a top pair, I guess, that I've had in my mind all night. But for me, I think when you just land back to the fundamentals and the basics, one that's just really practical in terms of its kind, but I still think it's really good in terms of a show bear look from the side. The young man's bear is going to go ahead and be your class winner. For me, I think that one's one that's just really opened up when he comes right at you. Super square down his top and one that's just really muscular when you view him from behind. I like the way that one's bolder and more robust there in terms of the center part of his body. I think just one that reads a little more practical in his overall kind, but I still think it's good enough in terms of his look and his build when you study him from the side. The young lady's predominantly white bear is one that hits you really hard when he first comes in. I think one that's just really long spine, really up-headed, tall-shouldered bear that you really like just in terms of his overall design. I guess for me, his downfall is when he comes right at me, one that just for his top side shape and muscularity, I'd like just to pry him open in terms of his chest, one that reads a little flatter in terms of his side when you study him, I guess for me. But a really close pair, and I think you can definitely talk your way into either one of those to win. The young man's bear that comes out in third, this young man's worked really hard showing this one, and I think it's just a really practical kind of a bear. It's super muscular, really practical in terms of his rib and body, really flexible up under him in terms of his rear leg, one that maybe just doesn't balance up quite as well as those two right ahead of him, but just in terms of a practical kind of a market hog, young man's certainly done a nice job with him. The one that comes out next, I thought third and fourth were close because to me they're similar in terms of their type and kind, but still really different. The young man's bear that comes out next is one that's just really muscular, really shapely. I guess for me that one's one that's a little shorter and plainer about his head, one that just doesn't have that look and design from the side, but a really practical, shapely kind of bear to land in fourth. The young man's bear that comes out next is one that's really lean and expressive in terms of his shape and his muscularity. For me, that one just a little too frail and his feature down low. He just needs to be a softer and more pliable in terms of his center body. From there, the young man's bear that comes out next is one that's really flexible in terms of his skeleton, one that can really get out and go. I guess for me, that one's one that's just a little flatter in terms of his overall makeup, particularly when you study him there in terms of his center body. The young lady that comes out next is one kind of similar to the one that was just ahead of us, really flexible, can really get out and go, and really have some endurance in the drive. For me, that one's one that just reads a little flatter in terms of his overall makeup, just needs to be widened out and pulled apart to go ahead and compete. The young man that rounds out the class, one that's certainly really lean, one that's really expressive in his shape. I guess for me, there's just not quite enough of it. He's a little frailer in terms of his overall makeup, just needs more shape and muscularity to compete. But a really nice class, a good top pair. Let's give him a big round of applause.
First place goes to Christian Avalos. Second place goes to Peyton May. Third place goes to Ryland Smith. Fourth place goes to Daniel Clark. Fifth place goes to Ryder Thomas. Sixth place goes to Kaysen Norman. Seventh place goes to Amelia Roberts. And eighth place goes to Harrison Webb. Coming back for showmanship will be Christian Avalos and Peyton May. We're now ready for Class 3. Exhibitor 526, Brody Hines. Exhibitor 564, Kaysen Newman. Exhibitor 615, Braden Congleton. Exhibitor 622, Colton Corson. Exhibitor 675, Stevie Shontag, and Exhibitor 687, Riken Rickett, with pigs weighing 267.
Well, I hope everyone's having a grand time enjoying the swine show here at the Hardee County Fair. We appreciate our sponsors of the fair, Vision Ace Hardware, Mosaic, Suncoast Credit Union, Advent Health, and Intercoastal Steel Builders. We're in Division II Class 3. We are wrangling some pigs.
Well, this is the first
and
time we've
working them
left
over
the
to
class
chute.
winner out here by himself in the ring, and I think it's because he does so pretty handily for me. I don't think that one's even close. This little boy does a really good job of driving him. Just one that's just really practical in terms of his kind. Love the length of body in this one. Just love his skeleton. Just super flexible. The little boy drives him at a really good speed. He gets out and goes. Plenty of shape and muscularity, foot and bone. I guess just kind of a no-holes market hog in my mind. The two that come out next, I think, get close. For me, the young ladies, I think in that particular pair of second and third just has a little more shape and muscularity, particularly when you study them up high. I think that one's one that's wider down his top. He has more turn and curvature there as he comes out of his spine in terms of his rib. I think one that just edges him out in terms of shape and muscularity. For me, that one's one that just doesn't have the look and the design, probably not just as wide at the ground as our class winner. The young man that comes out next, the down-eared bear, is one that's just really long and lean, one that you really like in terms of his look and design. I guess for me, it's when he comes and goes away from you that I just don't think he has enough width and skeletal shape to compete, but a really nice bear when you study him from the side. From there, the young man's white bear that comes out next, one that's just really practical in terms of his kind. He has some shape and muscularity up high. I guess for me, he's just a little plainer in terms of his shape, one that's probably a little more past his prime in terms of his finish as well, but just practical in terms of his rib and body and his shape and muscularity. The young man's Belcher bear that comes out next is one that goes to the ground on some foot and bone, one that's good in terms of his design on the top side of his skeleton. I guess for me, that one's one that's a little more closed up down low, one that's just not as quiet, as shapely and muscular as some of those right ahead of him. The young man that comes out next is one that's certainly pliable in terms of his center body. I guess for me, that one's one that needs to be strengthened up in terms of his pasterns. He just needs a little more look and design to go ahead and compete with the ones ahead of him. But a nice class, really nice class winner. Let's give him a big round of applause.
First place goes to Brody Hines. Second place, Stevie Shontag. Third place, Riken Rickett. Fourth place, Colton Corson. Fifth place, Braden Congleton. And sixth place, Kason Newman. Coming back for showmanship will be Brody Hines. We're now ready for the Division II champion. We need Janelle McDuffie from Class 1, Christian Avalos from Class 2, and Brody Hines from Class 3. We need Division III Class 1. Please report to your pen. Division III Class 1.
Well, I think the competition really stepped up here in our second division. I think really 3 really good class winners when we get back out here, and ones that certainly probably have a little more similarities to them than we did in our first division. I'm not going to go back and talk them, but I think there's one that just hit me really hard when they first came in the ring. One that I think does a really good job of combining shape and muscularity, still in a really flexible build, a really fresh show ring design. The young lady's bear right here in front of me is going to go ahead and be your champion.
We need Caroline Sharp to bring her pig back into the ring. Caroline Sharp. Our champion is Janelle McDuffie.
Well, we get back out here for reserve, and I guess it gets a little closer for me. I think the 2 class winners that are left out here are probably similar in terms of their type and kind, just really practical kind of bears that have a lot of those 2 class winners. There's one that just has a little more stoutness of feature, maybe just a little more look. The one out of the class that was second to our champion, one that's just really fresh in terms of his appearance. Love the shape and muscularity in that one. I guess like we talked about in class, probably just not flexible enough in terms of his skeleton. The longer they're out here, I think there's just one that's just overwhelming in terms of the young man's bear out of class will be your reserve.
Reserve goes to Christian Avalos. We'll now be ready for Division 3, Class 1. Marissa Shelton, Exhibitor 531, Emma Ures, Exhibitor 682, Jordan Miller, Exhibitor 510, Jake Hayes, Exhibitor 665, Justin Hayes, Exhibitor 668, Connell, Exhibitor 680, Mackenzie Parks, and Exhibitor 681, Rayleigh Deemer. Weight weighing 268 to 269. Division III, Class 3, please report to your pen at this time. Division III, Class 3.
Well, I guess this particular class, maybe there isn't one that just hit me super hard when they came out here, but I think if you just study them in terms of the fundamentals, open in terms of their skeleton, ones that have a muscularity, there's the practical kind that's pliable in terms of her skeleton. The young lady's white bear is going to go ahead and be your class winner. I think one that just overwhelms this particular class in terms of shape and muscularity, that one's one that can flat get out and go just in terms of his skeleton. She does a really nice job of keeping that one at a good speed, just keeping him going, and you always get the best look at that one just in terms of how practical and good kind of a market hog he is. You know, he's probably not the freshest just in terms of his shape, probably not just the freshest there ahead of his blade, but just in terms of being busted open and one that has a lot of shape and muscularity. I like that one a lot in that regard. The young man that's going to come out next is probably the opposite end of the spectrum, one that I think has that look and that design from the side, one that's really tall-shouldered, can be up-headed, like the way that one comes there in terms of his tail set. I guess for me, one that's just not as quite as opened up in terms of his lower skeleton, one that doesn't have near the shape and muscularity when you get right behind him. But certainly, two, I think that have big class advantages just in terms of their skeleton and the class winner in terms of shape and muscularity. The one that comes out next, I think one that has some practicality, one that has some rib and body and stoutness. I guess for me, that one's just a little plainer in terms of his overall makeup. one I'd like to clean up there ahead of his blade, like to make him more nearly level there out of his hip as well. Kind of the same story goes for the young ladies that comes out in fourth. I think that pair is really similar. I guess hers is probably a little leaner in terms of his shape, but probably doesn't have as much of it, so I guess there's kind of a toss-up there. For me, I'd just like to see that one just have a little more shape and muscularity, go to the ground on a little bit more foot and bone, but certainly practical and just as overall kind. The young ladies that comes out next is one that's super long-bodied, one that's really long, really extended, tons of foot and bone when you study this one. I guess for me, I'd just like to see him a little fresher in terms of his skin and hair. With that, I'd like to see him just a little more pliable and robust there in terms of the center part of his body, but certainly one that's really long and really extended, a lot of foot and bone. The young lady that comes out next is one that really has some good pieces in terms of shape and muscularity up high, really stout and powerful. I guess for me, that one just needs to be more comfortable as he gets out and goes. He needs to be stronger right there behind his blade as well, but certainly a good carcass kind of a hog. The young man that comes out next is one that's just really lean and really expressive. I guess for me, he's just too closed up in his lower skeleton, one that needs a little more practicality to the center part of his body. The young man's doing a nice job showing the one that comes out next, and one that certainly has some flexibility to his skeleton. I guess for me, that one's one that's just too closed up off of both ends of his skeleton. He needs more shape and muscularity to place any higher, but a nice class. Let's give them a big round of applause.
First place goes to Mackenzie Parks. Second place goes to Judson Hayes. Third place goes to Jordan Miller. Fourth place goes to Emma Yurs. Fifth place goes to Marissa Shelton. Sixth place goes to Rayleigh Deemer. Seventh place goes to Wyatt Connell. And eighth place goes to Jake Hayes. We're now ready for Division 2. Exhibitor 501, Gage Cartwright. Exhibitor 509, Morgan Peterson. Exhibitor 543, Macy Kate Gaskins. Exhibitor 692, Lana Christian.
Garen.
Exhibitor 515, Garen Thornton. Exhibitor 533, Wesley Cornelius.
Ryson.
Exhibitor 634, Ryson Whiteside.
Lyric.
And Exhibitor 686, Lyric Rickett.
You didn't call showmanship.
Pigs weighing 270 to 271. Out of Class 1, coming back for showmanship, will be Mackenzie Parks and Jake Hayes. Division 4, Class 1, please report to your pen. Division 4, Class 1. We would like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. We know that we're all living in unusual times, but we really appreciate y'all coming out and supporting our youth of our county.
You're good. Well, another class in which I guess for me it shakes out to be a pretty easy class winner, and the young lady right here in front of me, I think one that just really in terms of shape and muscularity, that one's one that needs to win within this respective class. We're getting into heavier weights, and I think that one's probably the one that maintains his freshness the best, the one that still has the most turn and shape there to his top. I still think he gets out adequate for all the shape and muscularity and the weight that he's at, but if we could change him, certainly like to make him a little more comfortable off of his rear too. The young lady's bear that comes out in second is probably one that is more flexible in terms of his rear leg, one that gets out and goes and is really flexible in terms of his skeleton. I guess for me, that one's one that just reads a little staler there in terms of his chine, one that just doesn't have the shape and muscularity when you study him back to our class winner, but certainly flexible and really practical in terms of his rib and body. A lot of good things about that one, maybe just not as fresh as that one that goes ahead and wins. The one that comes out next, yep. Young ladies that comes out next is one that, maybe I started out and I was questioning myself whether he had enough shape and muscularity. I guess of the remaining ones, he's probably the leanest in terms of his condition and just the freshest of those remaining ones. I think from the side, he offers you a length of spine and a lot of look in terms of design. I guess for me, where he falls out and compare those two ahead of him, he's not as opened up in terms of his chest floor, just not as much stoutness and power, but certainly I think one that's really lean in terms of his design and combines that with a pretty good skeleton as well. The young man that comes out next is one that's really shapely, really expressive. I think certainly in that regard could move up and within this respective class. For me, this is one that just needs to be redesigned in terms of his rear skeleton, one that wants to get way too outside of his body wall as he gets out and goes and swivels out of his hip, but one certainly in terms of carcass merit is really going to have a lot of value. The young man that comes out next, he's doing a really nice job of driving that one. I think one that you like in terms of some pieces of design. I think he has some shape and muscularity from behind. I guess for me, that one's one that's just a little further past his prime in terms of his finish, one that I just like to see maybe 10 or 12 pounds ago, but one that you really like in terms of just his practicality and his overall look. The young man that comes out next is one that's flexible in terms of his skeleton, one that you like in terms of his stoutness of feature and stoutness of skull. I guess for me, that one's one that's starting just to lose his top side shape, one that's just not as fresh in terms of his overall look, needs a little more shape and muscularity to compete. The one that comes out next, certainly one that is really flexible. He has some cool pieces in terms of just his foot and his bone and just how stout and featured he is. I like the one before him. I think one that's a little past his prime. I just like to see him with more shape and turn there and on the top side of his skeleton, see him with a little more genuine stoutness when you get him behind him as well. The young lady that comes out next, one that's certainly been practical and put on weight pretty easily for her. I guess that's really his detriment in my mind, one that's just really too far gone in terms of his finish, but certainly one that has some stoutness, some width of skeleton. For me, he just needs to be peeled back there in terms of his fat cover. But a really nice class. Let's give him a big hand.
First place goes to Morgan Peterson. Second place goes to Lana Christian. Third place goes to Garen Thornton. Fourth place goes to Ryson Whiteside. Fifth place goes to Wesley Cornelius. Sixth place goes to Gage Cartwright. Seventh place goes to Lyric Rickett. And eighth place goes to Macy Kate Gaskins. Coming back for showmanship will be Lana Christian and Wesley Cornelius. We're now ready for Class 3 of Division 3, 608, Marty Edenfield, 629, Caleb Hughes, 635, Aaron Malloy, 508, Laney Kate Johnson, 619, Kason Bryan, and 691.
Well, I guess if you ask me why I typically place them bottom to top, this class would be an example of why, because I guess there's not one that just really hit me when they first came in the ring, but the longer you sort on them and just sort, really to this, at this weight, it's really just the basics. Ones that are lean enough in terms of their finish, ones that have plenty of shape and muscularity. If we meet those requirements, then we can really start studying on ones that are good in terms of their build and have those extras that we like in terms of the show ring. I guess for me in this class, it's just one that's just pretty basic, one that I think just does a lot of things right in terms of shape and muscularity, and of the pair we have left out here, I think he's one that's certainly leaner. The young lady in the white shirt is going to go ahead and be your class winner. I think that bear is not, there's really nothing special about that one, but I think if you just study him in terms of his functional build, one that has shape and muscularity, one that's big and stout featured, and I think particularly within this pair, he's the one that's certainly more appropriate there in terms of his finish. The young lady spotted up there is one that I really want to like. I think that one, if he was peeled back there in terms of his finish, is one that I would have probably really liked. I think he has shape and muscularity. I think he's obviously really bold and pried apart in terms of his center body. I guess for me, that one's just too far gone in terms of his finish. I just like to see that one a little leaner in terms of his overall design, but certainly one that I think had a lot of really nice pieces. The young lady's bear that comes out next is one that is really stout-skulled, one that has a lot of foot and bone. For me, the flatter-footed bear is one that just reads plainer when you study him from behind, one that I think is just continuing to lose his shape, and maybe one that just isn't quite as fresh and opened up as those ones right ahead of him, but certainly one that has a lot of good pieces when you study him from the side. The young man's bear right here, I think, is probably the leanest within this respective class. He's one that's probably going to go the rail with that advantage. I guess for me, when you study him, he's one that's pretty flat in terms of his rib and his body shape, one that just doesn't have quite enough muscularity to go with that leanness and expressiveness, but certainly one that has class advantages in that regard. The young lady's blue hip bear that comes out next is one that's really long, one that's actually really stout featured. I guess for me, that one just needs to be pried apart in terms of his skeleton. He needs more shape and muscularity to go ahead and compete. The young man's white bear that finishes out the class, one that has some width and skeletal width. I guess for me, one that's just like those ahead of him, probably needs to be a little fresher, a little leaner in terms of his condition, but certainly ones that are going to make have made practical market hogs just like to see them a little leaner in terms of their overall muscularity. But let's give them a nice round of applause.
First place goes to Laney Kate Johnson. Second place goes to Aubrey Sullivan. Third place goes to Aaron Malloy. Fourth place goes to Kason Bryan. Fifth place goes to Marty Edenfield. Sixth place goes to Caleb Hughes. Coming back for showmanship will be Laney Kate Johnson and Aubrey Sullivan. We're now ready for our Division III champion. We need Mackenzie Parks, Morgan Peterson, and Laney Kate Johnson in the ring. I need Division IV, Class 2 to report to your pen. Division IV, Class 2.
Well, in my mind, I guess this division has probably been a little more challenging within the respective classes. We get out here, and I think we have three bears that meet the fundamentals in terms of shape, muscle, ones that I think are lean enough in terms of their finish, and ones that I think when you get out here, there's some differences in terms of design, there's some differences in terms of skin and hair, and just overall look and quality. I guess for me, there's one that still kind of has the resemblance of a show bear out here, one that I think square in terms of his build, really shapely in terms of his top, just really like where this one's at for this weight. The young lady out of class 2 is going to go ahead and be your champion.
Morgan Peterson. We need Lana Christian to bring yours into the ring.
We get back out here, and certainly differences just probably in terms of look and design, differences in terms of width of skeleton and shape and muscularity. I guess for me, there's one more out here that I think really meets the basics, just in terms of a wide skeleton, a robust center, a lot of shape and muscle. The young lady's white bear is going to go ahead and be your reserve.
Mackenzie Park is reserved. We're now ready for Division 4, Class 1. Exhibitor 541, Will Cornell. Exhibitor 549, Delilah Madrono. Exhibitor 563, Gunnar Newman. Exhibitor 530, Lily Southwell. Exhibitor 610, Hagen Bryan. And exhibitor 614, Aiden Nix. Pigs weighing 274 to 275. Division 4, Class 3, please report to your pen. Division 4, Class 3, please report to your pen. Truck donated by Kelly Buick is going to be raffled off October 21st. You can either do it on their website or there's a barcode up there for you people that are tech savvy. The money comes all back to the kids, so take your chances to win a brand new pickup truck.
another class with trade-offs within the respective top pair. I guess for me, there's one that just in terms of overall stoutness is the feature, one that I think is the most pulled apart, most robust in a center, and I think will go to the rail with the most volume of muscle. Is the young lady's right here in front of me. He's going to go ahead and be your class winner. I think one that just goes to the ground on the most substance of foot and bone. I think he matches that all the way up and is probably just the most proportional. He's one that's really stout in terms of his forearm, has a lot of shape and muscularity. Is he the leanest and most attractive ahead of his blade? No. Is he the freshest just in terms of his overall shape? Probably not. But I think just in terms of overall muscularity, one that has some stoutness of feature and one that's really, really good on the drive as she gets out and drives him. She does a nice job with that as well. But just kind of the solid bear for me to land on. The young man that comes out next is one that I think you like in terms of his leanness. I think he's one that's fresher on the top side of his skeleton. When that one gets out and drives, can give you some pieces and look of design. I guess for me, it's just harder to read that one when he doesn't get out and drive, and he reads a little rounder out of his hip. He's a little frailer there in terms of his feature. But really a pair that have some trade-offs in terms of big class advantages. But I like the one just that's stouter, more powerful to go ahead and win. Young man's mare that comes out next is one that's really shapely. That one has a ton of shape and muscularity from behind. I think one that's going to go to the rail is a pretty good carcass hog. I guess for me, that one's one that just kind of becomes piecier in terms of his design. When you study him right there in terms of his hip loin, I think he's one that just gets a little tighter and more restrictive as he gets out and goes, but certainly going to make a nice one when you get that one on the rail. The young man that comes out next is one that I think certainly offers some flexibility as he gets out and goes. He's really good in the turn and shape to his grip. I guess for me, that one's one that's a little further past where he needs to be in terms of his finish, one that I just like to see a little bit leaner in terms of his overall shape. The young lady that comes out next is probably leaner in terms of his shape. He's one that's really flexible in terms of the way he gets out and goes and really has some look of design. I guess for me, it's when he comes and goes is where I start questioning if there's just enough muscle and shape to go ahead and compete, but really one you like in terms of his design and his flexibility. The young man's belted bear that comes out next is one that's certainly really opened up in terms of his center body. I guess for me, that one's one that's just a little too far in terms of his finish, one that I just like to see a little bit leaner there in terms of his topside shape. Young lady's red hog that rounds out the class is one that's flexible in terms of his skeleton. He's probably leaner than the one right ahead of him. I guess for me, that one's just a narrower constructed one. It needs more shape and muscularity in a market hog show. But a nice class, let's give them a hand.
First place goes to Lily Southwell. Second place goes to Hagen Bryan. Third place goes to Gunnar Newman. Fourth place goes to Aiden Nix. Fifth place goes to Clayton Harris, shown by Gracie Thomas. Sixth place goes to Will Cornell. And seventh place goes to Delia Madrano. Coming back for showmanship will be Gunnar Newman and Lily Southwell. I need Chase Albritton. Chase Albritton, please go to your pen at this time. Chase Albritton. We are now ready for Class 2. Exhibitor 607, Alyssa Gicker. Exhibitor 502, Peyton Peterson. Exhibitor 603, Gavin Prescott. Exhibitor 513, Harper Grimsley. Exhibitor 602, Peyton Lambert. And Exhibitor 628, Chase Bryant. Pigs weighing 276 to 278.
that's similar about these two. And I think if we combine the strengths of both of them, we have us a really, really good market hog. I guess for me, when we start studying them, there's one that I think is just probably a little more appropriate in terms of where he needs to be in terms of finish. One that I think is longer spine. He gets out and goes with more flexibility. Really, really shapely and muscular. The young man is going to go ahead and be your class winner. I guess for me, that one's one that probably didn't hit me that hard when he first came in, but you start studying that one, and he's so shapely and so expressive from behind. He gets out and goes with flexibility, and the young man's done a really good job of keeping that one's head up, and yet I still think he offers a look of design on the side. I'll be the first to admit it, he needs to be softer and more practical in his center body for me, but I think when you study this pair, he's the one that offers the true carcass merit just in terms of his leanness and his overall design. For me, the young ladies pair hit me harder when he came in the ring. That one's one that's super muscular, a lot of shape and dimension, really practical and bold in terms of his body type. I guess for me, the longer he's out here, one that's just a little tighter off of both ends of his skeleton, one that's a little shorter and more jammed up in terms of his overall kind. But a really nice pair. I certainly couldn't argue with you if you like them either way. From there, the young ladies pair that was in third is one that I kind of liked at times. I think he's one that's flexible in terms of his skeleton. He's practical in terms of his rib and his body. And I think he has plenty of shape and muscularity. I guess for me, where he falls out with those two ahead of him, he's probably a little plainer just in terms of his overall shape, a little plainer in terms of his overall design, but certainly one that's practical in terms of his body type, practical in terms of his build. The young man's pair that comes out next is one that's really bold in terms of his forearm, one that's really shapely when you get in behind him. I guess for me, that one's one that just gets a little weaker there in terms of his top line. I wish I could modify him in the way that he goes off of his rear skeleton as well. Young ladies that comes out next is one that's really long spine, really level top. I guess for me, one that just needs more shape and muscularity. I'd like to open him up off of both ends of his skeleton. Same goes for the young man that finishes rounds out the class. One that's long and extended, one that's certainly lean in terms of his design. I guess for me, I'd like to see him complement that leanness with a little more shape and muscularity to compete. But a nice class, let's give him a hand.
First place goes to Gavin Prescott. Second place goes to Alyssa Gicker. Third place goes to Peyton Lambert. Fourth place goes to Chase Bryant. Fifth place goes to Harper Grimsley. And sixth place goes to Peyton Peterson. Coming back for showmanship will be Alyssa Gicker and Gavin Prescott. We're now ready for Class 3. Exhibitor 540, Warren Cornell. Exhibitor 561, Jack Clark. Exhibitor 613, the 4-H Foundation, shown by Adriana Avalos. Exhibitor 617, Darla Jo Hart. And Exhibitor 631, Sheila Albrecht, pigs weighing 279.
8:05 on Monday night, February 15, 2001. I am at the Hardee County Fair at the at the Swine Show. Where might you be? Well, if you're not here and you can hear my voice, then you must be watching on Facebook. And we thank you for tuning in. 2001 is Hardee County Fair's 80th anniversary. 80 years of county fun. Midway rides, elephant ears, hot dogs, corn dogs. You can't come to the fair without eating a corn dog. We are in Division 4 of Class 3 of Division 4 Swine Show, and we are excited to be here. This year's lead sponsors for the Hardee County Fair are Vision Ace Hardware, Mosaic, Suncoast Credit Union, Advent Health, and Intercoastal Steel Building. We appreciate your sponsorship and support of the Hardee County Fair. My name is Lee Michael, and I am with Life Action Media, and we are providing tonight's live stream services. We hope you're enjoying it.
Well, we're getting into these heavier weights, and I think they start sorting out a little easier for me. I think we have two really high-quality ones here when we get into our top hair. I guess for me, there's one that's just a little more opened up in terms of the skeleton, one that offers a little more expressive shape, a little more dimension when you get it from behind him. The young lady right here in the white shirt is going to go ahead and be your class winner. One that I really like in terms of his look and his design, one that's super practical and pliable in terms of his center body. I think he couples it with more than enough muscle, just really flexible, really good in terms of his skin, hair, and his freshness for this stage of the game. Young lady's done a really good job of driving this one in second. One that I think is just super flexible in terms of his build. He's long and he's extended. I guess for me, where has plenty of shape and muscle, but I guess for me where the difference lies is one that just gets a little rounder out of his hip, one that isn't quite as useful and attractive up ahead of his blade, but certainly one just in terms of flexibility and practicality has a lot of things to like. The young lady's blue bud bear that comes out next is one that certainly has some shape and some dimension. I guess for me, one that's just not as flexible on the drive, one that doesn't piece together quite as well as those ahead of him when you study him in terms of design. The young man's white bear is one that's really wide up top, one that's really stout and powerful from behind. I guess for me, that one's one that's just a little shorter and more jammed up, one that needs to be a little leaner and more expressive in terms of his shape as well. The young man's broken belted bear that rounds out the class is one that definitely offers some flexibility, one that's certainly been pretty practical in terms of feet. I guess for me, that's also worked to his disadvantage, where he's one that just needs to be a little fresher in terms of his condition, one that needs to be a little more genuine in terms of his shape. But a nice class, let's give him a hand.
First place goes to Sheila Albritton. Third place goes to Adriana Avalos. Third place goes to Darla Jo Horn. Fourth place goes to Warren Cornell. Fifth place goes to Jack Clark. We're now ready for the Division 4 champion drive. We need Lily Southwell from Class 1, Gavin Prescott from Class 2, and Sheila Albritton from Class 3. Showmanship from that class is Sheila Albritton and Adriana Avalos. Division drive. I think there's differences among them. I think both
all three of them off of their strengths. I guess there's one for me that just combines a lot of really good things in terms of build and design, but yet I still think has plenty of shape and muscularity. I think within this perspective drive is pretty unique how fresh, up-headed, and really good design he is. The young lady's out of the last class, so you go ahead and be your champion.
We need the 4-H Foundation, Adriana Avalos, to bring her pig in. We need all Division 5, Class 1, 2, and 3, report to your pens.
We get back out here for reserve, and kind of like it's been all night, reserve gets a little tougher for me. I guess there's one I think that also combines some of the freshness and the design and the look. One that we talked about in class would certainly be a little more practical in terms of the center body, but I think probably matches up the best with our class winner just in terms of freshness, shape, and muscularity, and being at the right stage of the game. The young man's right here in the corner is going to go ahead and be reserved.
Reserve is Gavin Prescott. We are now ready for Division 5, Class 1. Exhibitor 511, Houston Grimsley. Exhibitor 547, Ariel Garza. Exhibitor 556, Aiden Thomas. Exhibitor 559, Cody Knight. Exhibitor 630, Carter Gordon. Exhibitor 672, Ava Roberts. And Exhibitor 698, Gavin Van Sickle. Pigs weighing 280.
won't need him to weigh 280, and you got him there because these are three really, really good ones. Let's give these three young men a big round of applause. From the showmanship to the presentation, just the way that they've got these hogs looking, they have done an incredible job. But I guess for me, when you get out here, there's one that I think combines the really good pieces of the other two, and one that I think just really offers a lot in terms of look and design. I think he's so fresh and crisp in terms of his shape, but one that's still really flexible as he gets out and goes. Just love how opened up he is and how square he is. The young man's right here in the middle is going to go ahead and be your class winner. I think that one is just so good when you study him from the side, and yet when he comes and goes away from you, he's equally as impressive. I like that one a good deal. The young man's just going to be second. He's right here. I think one that's just really shapely. That one is stout forearm. He's really opened up. Love his shape and muscularity from behind. I guess where that one beats you, buddy, is that he just is better out of his hip. I think this one gets a little rounder out of his hip, one that's not quite as fresh and extended right there ahead of his blade. But just in terms of sheer shape, power, muscularity, and body shape, I really, really like that one. The young man's is going to be third. That one could have won a lot of classes today because that one is really good in terms of his structure. Love the practicality and just the look of practicality that one gives you. I guess compared to those other two, he maybe gets outmatched in terms of design from the side. One that probably goes to the ground a little frailer in terms of his foot, maybe not just as overwhelming in terms of his shape and his muscularity. But that's something to take away from that one because he's really, really good as well. These next four just ran into a really stout trio of hogs in front of them. The young lady's mare right here is one that's flexible in terms of his design, one that certainly has some practicality. I guess for me, he's just too plain in his shape. Maybe doesn't have the overall look and presence to compete with that trio right ahead of him. The young man's white bear that comes out next, one certainly offers some practicality, one certainly that has some shape and some width. I guess for me, that one's the one that's just a little more closed up when you study him down low, one that maybe just doesn't bring forth the extra look and design as those two right ahead of him. The young man's spotted bear is one that certainly, sorry, y'all are good. One that I think has some shape and some muscularity when you study him from behind. I guess for me, that one's one that just needs to match it with more true width down low. He needs to be more expressive in his overall shape. The young lady's red hog that rounds out the class, certainly one that's flexible in terms of his skeleton and long spine. For me, he just needs to have more shape and muscle to go ahead and compete. But a really, really, really good class up there on the top end. Let's give him a big hand.
First place goes to Gavin Van Sickle. Second place goes to Cody Knight. Third place goes to Carter. Goes to Aiden Thomas, and seventh place goes to Ariel Garza. We're now ready for Class 2. 544, Cruz Gaskins. 601, Michael Lambert. 504, Emma Hayes. 517, Bailey Kinsley. 537, Haley Norman. And 667, Connor Patterson. Pigs weighing 281 to 282. Showmanship from Class 1 will be Cody Knight, Carter Gordon, and Gavin Van Sickle.
young ladies across the ring is going to go ahead and be your class winner. I think that one is just tremendous in terms of shape and muscularity. To be this weight and to be that fresh is really, really unique. She does an incredible job of driving that one. He's so stout forearm, so square, gets out and goes really well out of his rear leg. One that I think is just really good. When we get back in this division, it's certainly going to be a lot of fun. Young man's white bear is one that's really fault-free, one that has shape and muscularity, one that's practical in terms of his rib and his body, one that's just flexible in terms of his design. To me, that one just really just gets out manned by our class winner. Maybe he doesn't go as square and true off of his hip and rear leg. Certainly just a practical, good kind of a market hog, just reps into a really, really good one that wins. Young man that comes out next is one that has a lot of shape and a lot of muscularity, really expressive in his topside shape. I guess for me, that one's one that just kind of wants to get up there in terms of his top line. He gets steeper there out of his hip and maybe doesn't piece together quite as well on the go as those two do right ahead of him. Young man's black-headed bear is one that certainly has some skeletal width, has some dimension. I guess for me, that one's one that's just a little further gone in terms of his finish, one that I just like to see a little bit leaner when you study him there, particularly ahead of his blade. Next one that comes out is certainly one that is leaner in terms of his overall design. I guess for me, that one just needs to have more shape and muscularity. He needs to be more pulled apart when he's coming right at you to go ahead and compete. Young ladies that rounds out the class is sound, flexible one that certainly has a lot of length of spine. For me, that one just needs more muscle, just needs more carcass merit to go ahead and get any higher. But a really, really nice class, certainly a good class winner. Let's give him a big hand.
First place goes to Haley Norman. Second place goes to Cruz Gaskins. Third place goes to Michael Lambert. Fourth place goes to Bailey Tinsley. Fifth place goes to Connor Patterson. And sixth place goes to Emma Hay. We're now ready for Class 3. 609, Easton Amig. 627, Haley Bryant. 621, Lexi Water. 674, Nolan Roberts. And 676, Natalie Hines. Pitch weighing 283 to 284. Showmanship from the last class is Cruz Gaskins and Haley Norman. We need all Division 6 to please report to their pins. All Division 6. And we're asking if you're taking pictures along the rail, please kneel down because the people behind you cannot see. Thank you.
more genuine shape and expression, one that I think is just a little fresher when you study it from the side. Wish this mare would just get out and go, but the young man's mare is going to go ahead and be your class winner. I think one that's just good in terms of his design. If he would pick his head up and really get out and go, I think one that you really like in terms of his freshness and his expression. I think one that just comes at you square and more genuine in terms of his build is a little stouter, more powerful from behind. Young lady can flat out show the one that comes out in second, because she gets out and goes with that thing. And he's really flexible on the drive. He's really good in terms of his top line. I guess for me, that one just reads a little plainer in terms of his shape. Probably isn't quite as opened up as our class winner, but no fault of hers, because she does a really, really good job of showing that. Young lady that comes out in third is one that really offers some depth and softness to his center body and is really practical in that regard. I guess for me, that one's one that just needs to be a little fresher in terms of his overall finish, one that's a little shorter and more jammed up in terms of his overall design. The young lady that comes out next is one that's really long and extended, one that's probably leaner in terms of his design. I guess for me, that one's one that's just flatter and more concave to the base of his rib, one that doesn't quite have as much shape and muscularity as those right ahead of him. Young man that rounds out the class, certainly one that has some expression of muscle. I guess for me, there's just not quite enough of it. He doesn't piece together quite as well as those right ahead of him. But a really nice class. Let's give him a big hand.
First place goes to Easton Amig. Second place goes to Natalie Hines. Third place goes to Haley Bryant. Fourth place goes to Lexi Waters. And fifth place goes to Nolan Roberts. Coming back for showmanship will be Natalie Hines. We're now ready for class Division 6, Class 1. The Division 5 Grand Champion, we need Gavin Van Sickle, Haley Norman, and Easton Amig in the race.
members of, I guess it was our first and our second class within this respective division. I'll tell you what I see in those differences just because I think it's really close. To me, the young man's bear that's right in front of me is one that probably isn't just overwhelming in terms of muscle. Now, I think he has plenty, and I think it works to his advantage because I think he comes at me square and truer to the ground. I think he leaves me with that same advantage. To me, that one's one that's really, really good in his design. Plenty of muscle, but just love that one just in terms of his design and his overall build. As always, the young man does a really good job of showing that one. The young ladies that we talked about, class 2, it's one that's probably on the other end of the spectrum. That one is super muscular, one that's just really wide and really opened up. I guess that also works to his disadvantage a little bit because that's one that was pinching in a little bit up front. Maybe isn't as comfortable and square as he goes right away from me. I guess when I start studying him, there's one that I think if you deem that he has plenty of muscle and then there's enough that it's just built just really, really good. The young man's is going to go ahead and be your champion with this today.
Gavin Van Sickle is grand. We need Cody Knight.
We get back out here for reserve, and like I said, that trio that our champion came out of was really, really tough. And you get it out here, and the decision for reserve is just as tough as champion was. But I guess, like we talked about in our champion drive, that one's one that's really extreme in terms of muscle shape. Really love his practicality. Probably not as correct off of both ends of his skeleton. I think that's where it becomes really close, is because both of those bears have the kind of the same disadvantages in that regard. This one to me is a little more forward in the angle to his blade, could be a little more comfortable off of his rear leg. I guess in just terms of look and design, just shape and muscularity, there's one that kind of matches up with our champion. That's the young man, he's going to go ahead and be your reserve.
Reserve goes to Cody Knight. We're now ready for Division 6, Class 1. Exhibitor 546, the FFA Junior, showed by Corey Smith. Exhibitor 605, Morgan Helline. 626, Warren Bryant. 505, Emma Jane Johnson. 532, Abigail Gers. And 548, Chase Obrit.
Well, the quality keeps coming in within this respective class. The young lady's bear is going to be the one to lead off because I think that one's just really square. When he comes right at you, one that's so good in terms of his top side shape, super muscular when you study from behind. Yeah, when she gets out and gets a whip on that one, I think one that just really pulls himself together really, really well in terms of design for this stage of the game. The young man's bear, he's doing a great job of driving this one. This one's flexible, and he lets him get out and go and just show off line. The good things about this bear, he's long, he's extended, super flexible on the drive, really practical in terms of his body type. I guess for me, that one's one that's just not quite as opened up as our class winner. He's just not quite as stout when you get it right behind him. But a really nice bear, you do a really good job of driving that one. The one that comes out here in third, young lady's all black bear is one that has some shape and some muscularity. Really like that one when you study from behind. I guess for me, it's in terms of his build that I like to modify him. He's a little more forward in his blade, not quite as comfortable as he gets out and goes out of his rear leg. The young lady's Belted bear that comes out next is one that is more flexible in terms of his design. He's longer and more extended. For me, that one's one that's just too flat and narrow when you study it from behind. He needs a little more shape and muscle to go ahead and compete. The young lady's blue mask bear is one that certainly probably has more width and more dimension than the one right ahead of him. He's practical in terms of his rib and body. I guess for me, that one's one that just reads a little bit plainer in terms of his shape. He needs to go more correct as he gets out and goes off of his rear leg. The young man's black bear that rounds out the class is one that's long and extended. He gets out and goes clean, flexible. For me, that one just needs more shape, muscle, and skeletal width to go ahead and compete. But a really nice class winner. Let's give him a big hand.
First place goes to the FFA Junior Chapter shown by Corey Smith. Second place goes to Warren Bryant. Third place goes to Morgan Helline. Fourth place goes to Emma Jane Johnson. Fifth place goes to Abigail Yurs. And sixth place goes to Chase Bryant. Coming back for showmanship will be Corey Smith and Warren Bryant. We're now ready for Class 2. 539, Colton Norman. 551, Kason Rickett. 612, Samuel Hughes. 625, Russell Bryant. 545, Kason Goff, shown by Seth Durrance. 623, Mason Justice. And 636, Riley Justice. Pigs weighing 287 to 293. Reserve champions of each division, please report to your pen at this time. All reserve champions of each division. Katie Henderson from Division 1, Christian Avalos from Division 2, Mackenzie Park from Division 3, Gavin Prescott from Division 4, and Cody Knight from Division 5. While we're working this last class, we'd like to take the opportunity to thank all the volunteers that have made this swine show possible. We've got a slew of people behind us working. We got a slew of the people to the side of us working. And I would like to take a special recognition to our ringmen tonight. All of our ringmen tonight, the young men on the far end of the ring, have been past exhibitors here and seniors, and we asked them to come back and help, and everyone agreed to, so let's give them a round of applause for showing up tonight and working the ring for us. One thing I want to make sure is everybody that's working is a volunteer, so they give up their time and their efforts to come out and help the youth of our community.
drop in quality throughout the show. I think there's still really good ones when we get out to this last class. For me, the young man right here in the FFA jacket is going to be your class winner. I think I really like this one in terms of his stoutness of feature, one that's just really opened up, super bold in terms of his cage, and lays a really big top, really stout and powerful hip out of it. Just a really, really practical, good build, stout kind of a market hog. The young man that's going to be second is one that fits really similar in terms of type and kind. These bears are very similar just in terms of their shape, their muscularity, the way you view them from the side. I guess the big difference for me is the young man in second needs to go away from me square and truer to the ground. He's one that probably just doesn't piece together quite as well from the side as our class winner, but a nice pair of blue hip bears to lead off with. The young man that comes out in third, man, the young man's having fun, and he makes it a lot of fun for me too. And I really love this one's look and design from the side. When he drives him right in front of me is one that I just really like. I think he's up-headed, I think he's fresh, I think he's just really good in that regard. I guess for me, it's when you get him right behind you, then that one kind of falls to third. He's a little flatter in terms of his shape and his muscularity, not quite as opened up there through his chest. The young man's black bear, or belted bear that comes out next is one that certainly has shape and expression. He's probably stouter there from behind than even the one in third. I guess for me, he needs to carry it better off of his rear leg, one that doesn't piece together quite as well when you study it from the side. The young man's belted bear that comes out next is one that is really flexible and good in terms of its design, really level there in terms of his top. For me, that one's one that just needs more shape and muscularity to go ahead and compete. The red bear that comes out next is one that has some skeletal width, certainly fragile in his rib and body. For me, that one's one that's just had too many gates on feet, one that needs to be pulled back a little bit in terms of his finish, but certainly some shape and muscularity there. The young man's white bear that's going to round out the class is one that's flexible as he gets out and goes. Really like that one in terms of his structural base. For me, he just needs more topside shape and dimension to go ahead and compete, but a really nice class. Let's give him a big round of applause.
First place goes to Casey Golf, shown by Seth Durrance. Second place goes to Mason Justice. Third place, Russell Bryant. Fourth place, Casey Rickett. Fifth place, Colton Norman. Sixth place, Riley Justice. And seventh place, Samuel Hughes. Coming back for showmanship in that group is Russell Bryant and Seth Durrance. We're now ready for the division champion. We need Corey Smith and Casey Golf's pig, shown by Seth Durrance in the pen.
One that gets out and goes really free and easy, long-bodied, really good in terms of his top line, probably like his extra length of hip. For me, I guess when he comes right at me, probably not quite as opened up as the one that's right behind me, but I think really one that has plenty of shape and muscularity up high. I guess I wish he matched his shape up high with a little more pulled apart down low. The young lady's belted bear is one that's just overwhelming in terms of shape and muscularity. You love the pliableness of his out and center body. He's so bold and opened up, really kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, one that's just really wide when you study him coming right at you. Now, is he perfect out of his hip and into his tail set? Probably not, but one that I think just brings a lot of really good things together in terms of design, his rib, his body. I think he's better when he comes right at you. He's going to go ahead and be your champion with the disrespect of the division.
Champion goes to the FFA Junior, showed by Corey Smith. We will need Warren Bryant's pig back in the ring.
Well, we get back out here for our reserve division. Like we talked about in class, I thought this one was really flexible, really good in terms of the design. Maybe not just as stout and powerful as the one that won. I thought it was really close for champion. The young man's Blue Hip Bear is going to go ahead and be your reserve.
Reserve goes to Casey Golf, shown by Seth Durham. We're now ready for our grand champion drive. We need Serenity Bulk Knight from Division 1, Janelle McDuffie from Division 2, Morgan Peterson from Division 3, Seela Albritton from Division 4, Gavin Van Sickle from Division 5, and the FFA Junior Chapter shown by Corey Smith from Division 6. We need the reserve division champions to come to the makeup ring. The reserve division.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to all that, and I'll save any really big speeches, not that I give them later. But I think there's just, like we said, a lot of quality when we come back out here, a lot of similarities. For me, there was one that just hit me really hard from the time he came in the ring, through division, the entire time. The young man's right here in front of me, so go ahead and be our champion.
Gavin Van Sickle has the grand champion. We need Cody Knight to bring his pig into the ring at this time. Janelle McDuffie is our reserve. We'd like to take this time and let's give Miss Callie Atkins a round of applause for coming down tonight and judging, and we'll see her the rest of the week. We want to invite everybody back to Showmanship tomorrow night at 5 o'clock. Showmanship at 5 o'clock, followed by the breeding show at 7, and then we have the dairy show at 4:30 on Wednesday, followed by the steer show at 6 o'clock. Everybody have a safe evening, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
We want to thank you for joining in this evening to the Swine Show here at the Hardee County Fair 2001. Life Action Media, your streaming provider, thanks you for watching. The Hardee County Fair also wants to thank its lead sponsors, Vision Ace Hardware, Mosaic, Suncoast Credit Union, Advent Health, and Intercoastal Steel Builders. Thank you for your continued support of this wonderful fair here in Hardee County. Here in our 80th year, it's a great time to come out to the fair. So thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your evening and join us tomorrow as we go with the breeding and heifer show. And I think that's I think there's a second show as well. I can't remember off the top of my head. A lot of excitement today here at the fair. So come watch the shows with us all week long. We'll be live streaming all the shows. Thank you again for joining us tonight, and we look forward to providing you more exciting Hardee County Fair livestock.
That's what's bringing back home.